In this sport, you don't wait for judges to decide your fate. TenexToken puts you in control. Stake instantly, speculate discreetly, and keep your moves private. Register now for your share of the $250,000 prize pool. Multiple winners, bigger chances. TenexToken.io. Terms and conditions apply. This is Kugan Cassius for IFLTV. We are in Bahrain for the BRAVE 100 and 101 event this weekend. Delighted to be joined by Mr. Mohammed Shahid. How are you, sir, first of all?
Amazing, excited for the event, and good to have you here. I've been following IFLTV for a very long time, and it's amazing to have you here and cover this historic event for BRAVE100.
This is a sign of a good place for me. When I turned up to this resort here yesterday, and I start filming the room, the bathroom, and I'm like sending it to my friends, and I'm like, this place, my first time in Bahrain, and this place is unbelievable. So hopefully it's not my last. I know it won't be my last time here in Bahrain, but much appreciate your hospitality here, sir.
No, thank you very much. I'm glad that you're enjoying Bahrain. And this is something that we tell everybody, you know, like we don't have the PR or the exposure like our neighboring countries, but we definitely, one thing is for sure, once you enter Bahrain and you stay here for a bit, it's going to be very hard for you to not come back. And if you stay a little bit longer, it might be even very hard for you to leave the country, you know, and you'd love to set up your life here. It's quieter, it's smoother, and just somehow you just feel like that homely feeling. Yeah. And I always say that I'm not because you're just the nationals in Bahrain, even everybody who's as expats come and live here, when they go back to their country on a vacation, everybody says, I feel homesick. Wait, hold on, I am at home, you know, but you do feel homesick, and that's the beauty of Bahrain, the hospitality, the people here, and the history of the country. That's really the reason why you feel that the way you feel. It's just a combination of everything.
Yeah, I'm learning more about the history over the last couple of days more so, but yeah, my first time here, I'm here for a week, so when we do our last interview of the week after the fight night, then I can give you my whole experience, but yeah, pleasure to be here. First question I've got to ask you, where did you get the nickname The Hawk?
Oh, that was just a random nickname that started because when we were young, I have 3 older brothers. So we were always competitive. We were always competing within ourselves, but at the same time competing with others as well. So when you have 4x4 football matches, you know, you already have a team at my house. So that turned out to become almost like a group name, and we made it Hawks Family. And we were all into falconry, but I don't know, my oldest brother, he makes the decisions at that time, right? So he's the leader of the team, so he decided to make it Hawks Family and not Falcons, although we were all into falconry. So we loved the falcons, we loved the culture, and he was more into it than anybody else, while I was more into combat sports. But then as I started competing, I started finding that something more valuable as a name, because I liked that word hawk. It was of that hawk's vision and the hawk's view, and I always looked at fighting from that perspective, from the IQ perspective, more than just the technical side of how good you are as a puncher or a kicker or a wrestler, you know. So I just carried that with me, and then it just took off. And when I turned into the business world, I thought, why should your business card not have it, you know? So just because it's a corporate world, you don't have nicknames, forget it. I carried that all the way.
Well, I was curious to know that, because as in England, one of my best friends used to call me the goat. Okay. And not the greatest of all time, after the animal, the goat, right? There's a long story behind it. So basically what he used to do was, he used to make up this story where he said that Kugan was a goat herder from Sri Lanka. Told everyone. So people would come up to me and say, oh yeah, your family involved in the goat herding business, right? And I'd be like, no, who told you this? So that stuck with me. But now when people ask me, I just say, no, it's because I'm the greatest of all time. That's what I say. But that wasn't the actual story. The original story was my family were goat herders.
I have to figure out, I have to quickly find a new story and add that to the PR side, I guess. Definitely.
Right, let's talk about this week. Huge event here. Well, there's a few events here, obviously, in Bahrain, but let's talk about the card first of all on Friday. I had the pleasure of talking to Mr. Mokaev and a very confident Gerard Burns, which is, we'll talk about the other clashes, but I spoke to them in a kind of face-off situation. And yeah, Burns is confident. He believes he's going to dethrone the dethronable, if you like, in Mokaev. Mokaev's like, hold on, 37 people have tried and have failed. What a great fight this is.
Oh, absolutely. I think, so if you look at the 3 title fights that's in BRAVE100, I think all the 3 title fights have some bigger meaning than the fight itself. And we don't know how that's going to turn out. Is it going to be in the favor of the fighters or not, you know? And that's the situation with Mokaev and Gerard Burns, although that's a fantastic matchup between 2 amazing athletes. But you're looking at the pressure that Mokaev has. And again, sometimes you look at it and you say that if 38 people have tried that, and 37 wins, 1 no contest, no losses. But you're looking at it and you're like, that guy should not have any pressure. I mean, he's been doing that for a long time, you know, from an amateur level all the way to the professional side, and he's showcased that he's one of the best in the world. But at the same time, it's not just about his record, it's more about what he wants to prove as Mohammed Mokaev, what he's gone through in the past year or so. It's been crazy. I mean, a lot of people in the mixed martial art world are young to the sports industry, so they don't really know what this does to an athlete and how pressurizing it is and what they go through in their private lives, and they just see them competing. But he's gone through a very tough time because of all the public opinions. And it's not new, by the way. I mean, if your viewers and everybody else who follows football will understand that, because we've seen that in 1998 when David Beckham had that incident with Simeone. And after that, what happened with David Beckham by the public was crazy, right? Until that free kick for the qualifications of the World Cup, you know. But then we've seen that with Bukayo Saka as well, missing the penalty. And we've seen that same kind of effect that comes in. But Mokaev didn't miss a penalty. Mokaev didn't get a red card. Mokaev didn't do anything. He's 37-0. He's fought in UFC, 7-0 in UFC, undefeated in UFC, the #1 contender, 4 finishes, 2 performers of the night, and that's a boring fighter. That's the boring fighter that public thinks that, oh, maybe they didn't renew it because he was boring. You're like, 2 performers of the night, 4 finishes in 7 fights. That's a boring fighter. Doesn't make sense. But he still went through that, and this might be that crowning moment for him to make that difference to win the championship. So it's something much more bigger for him personally, but at the same time, it's also a message to the whole flyweight division that it's not about Mokaev, it's about the whole flyweight division in the world itself, that somehow in the mixed martial industry is looked down upon and said that that might not be the category that public wants to watch. But for me, I'm like, what do you want to watch when 2 athletes compete? Is the best of those athletes competing against each other. And the best athletes and the best transitions in mixed martial art is at the lower weight classes. But just because we've absorbed some names from other sports, we use the same thing. I think even the PR side for that divisions are bad, because you don't want to be called a strawweight or a flyweight is the weight class you're fighting in. So I think there's a lot of factors why the weight class is looked down upon, but there's a lot of change to be made. And I think Mokaev is standing up, and this fight is about the whole flyweight division. And he proved that he could sell out an arena and he could make the biggest noise while the flyweights are fighting. But then you have Gerard Burns, who is coming out absolutely exactly what you said, that this guy is confident. And he's not going to the president of the organization telling him that, hey, get me this fight with Mokaev. No, he's shouting for Mokaev to the whole world. And he's like, I want to beat Mokaev, you know. And that's why this fight is so interesting. But at the same time, Gerard Burns is one of those guys that you will see at the public weigh-ins, you'll see at the press conference and at the event. He brings that Irish energy into the arena wherever he goes, and there's very few people who have that aura of bringing the fans and people attracted towards you, and Gerard Burns has that.
I've seen a few people make comment that Gerard Burns could be kind of a second coming of a certain Conor McGregor. I mean, which is, I mean, look, I can appreciate people giving Gerard confidence, but I mean, that level, if people are putting him in that bracket of potentially being the next kind of Irish MMA next superstar, then yeah, why not?
And you have to remember that when you look at the Conor McGregor's history as well, I mean, sure, one of the things that everybody caught an eye on was not that Conor McGregor is the Conor McGregor today. We're talking about the Conor McGregor that everybody got attracted was that aura that he had even before UFC, really. When he came to UFC, he already had the hype, by the way. But what made him a superstar is when you beat a guy and knock somebody out who hasn't been finished or lost a fight in 10 years, and that was Jose Aldo. Yeah. That knockout shook the world, and we were all like, what the hell? And that is the position Gerard Burns in is with Mokaev. He's got the aura, he's bringing the fans, people are attracted to him, so all that is there, but he needs that Jose Aldo knockout, and that's November 7th.
Wow. I like your analogy with the football comparisons with Beckham and Saka. We could actually do a whole different interview on football, which we spoke about before, but we'll leave this to Brave. Talk to me about the other main title fights on the card, stacked card here in Bahrain.
So there's Gerard Burns and Mohammed Mokaev, right? We spoke about how it's bigger than everything else, but then you're looking at a fight between Alex Lahore and Mohammed Fakhruddin. Mohammed Fakhruddin, again, I have to use the word Conor McGregor. Other than Conor McGregor, keeping his name aside, I think he is the most entertaining MMA fighter in the world. It's sad that he hasn't got the acknowledgement that he deserves. And this guy, if anybody in the Middle East in MMA knows Mohammed Fakhruddin, that you will hear them speak the same thing. Everybody loves him in the Middle East MMA. He's one of those guys that you cannot go past the industry of MMA in Middle East and not talk about Mohammed Fakhruddin. He's done everything in the industry you can think of, winning the medal at the national level, became the 2-division champion at Brave. He's had some of the best sequel fights. Everybody that he's fought with, there has been a rematch, and it's always been chaos. There's something going on. It's a fight in the cage, fight outside. There's always a mess. You never have a dull day with Mohammed Fakhruddin, right? It's something mental when he comes into the cage, and you always want to continue those fights again. As a promoter, you're like, that's a dream come true. Every time he fights, you're like, there's something big that I can make a rematch. And that's his story with a lot of French African fighters as well. Most of this chaos happened with French African fighters, and this is that opportunity for him. And again, a French African fighter in Alex Lahore. But this time, Alex is very similar to Fakhruddin in terms of the knockout power. They both are going to go in, and literally, this is one of those fights that you can put money on with anybody and say that if this goes to the distance, you could take $100,000, you know, like it is not going to go to the distance. But Fakhruddin is inducted in the Hall of Fame and rightfully inducted into the Hall of Fame of Brave for the first time that we are hosting it. But at the same time, he's getting the Hall of Fame award tonight, and then tomorrow he's going to go to the weigh-ins, and face off with his opponent, and day after tomorrow he's going to break the record in the MMA world to be the only MMA fighter, along with one another, that's going to have 3 division titles in this sport.
Wow.
And to go to the final one, you're talking about Hamza Kohiji, and that is a lot of history behind it. Middle Eastern MMA wouldn't be what it is if it wasn't for Hamza Kohiji. But believe me, nobody talks about it. And this is one of those fighters where I say that he's the most underrated MMA fighter in the history, because he's built what you're seeing today in the Middle East. That's a completely different subject to talk, but what you see in combat sports in Middle East, and you've been following boxing as well, and you're one of those legends that I follow when it comes to the boxing news. So I know your knowledge on boxing. You know what's happening in this industry when it comes to boxing and MMA. Tell me 20 years back, was boxing, MMA, combat sports in this region? And how was it looked at, you know? Yeah. It was almost like a taboo. Not that we didn't love Muhammad Ali's, we didn't follow Mike Tyson's, but somehow you didn't have those events here, because that was not the events that we were looking at as some sports event that should be in the region, until a story went through where Hamza Kohiji was fighting in his first fight. And Hamza Kohiji never had an amateur career, and that's why we also, it's a lesson of the difference between Hamza and Mokaev in the same card, where Mokaev benefited from the amateur ranks in the grassroots development program, while Hamza's first fight where he ever saw a cage was in his first pro fight. That's when he knew what a cage looks like and feels like. And that was a fight he fought in India. And his second fight was a fight when an MMA organization came to Bahrain, Desert Force, and he was a co-main event of that fight. And the pressure he was going through while he's still learning. And from there, they saw it and they knew that MMA can make that difference of bringing countries together, bigger than sports values. And that's because he was backed by His Highness. So the next events in Desert Force that happened, he was the main event in every single fight until he signed with Brave. And when he signed with Brave, since then, till Brave 57, he's never fought in a main event. So this is going to be that opportunity to showcase not only that he could be a world champion, but at the same time get that acknowledgement of the past 10 years of what MMA has become in the Arab world, and everybody has forgotten that Hamza has a part to play in it, and a big part for that matter for Brave's existence, for MMA and combat sport in the Middle East. But he's fighting against Borislav Nikolic, who is a very similar storyline when it comes to the Balkan MMA region. And this is going to be that championship that the whole Balkan community in Europe don't want it to go out of their hands, because this is a world title. And you'll see the delegation from Slovenia, Slovakia, Serbia, and Bulgaria all in Bahrain, just to make sure that the belt is going back to the Balkan region, while Hamza is adamant that that's not going to happen while it is in Bahrain and he's the main event. So let's see what happens.
This is going to be some weekend here in Bahrain. Like I said, these events going on. I mean, I keep thinking about this fight with Mokaev and Burns, and sometimes, and I'm not saying Mokaev's ready for this, but the passing of the torch, and speaking to Burns the other day, he's so confident, and the other two fights you mentioned as well, there's a lot of history behind all these fights, and this weekend is going to be some weekend here. So let's hope the fighters deliver, which I'm sure they will come Friday and Saturday, yeah.
Absolutely, and that's what we do as an organization, right? The best we can do is to put that platform forward. I mean, the best platform where the whole world is watching, and that's the best you can do. The rest, the show is with the fighters, and they have to put on that show. But believe me, when we look at, that's why you get all kinds of fights, right? You're looking at Fakhruddin and Alex Lahore. You know there's going to be two guys throwing their hands and just trying to knock each other out. And that's exactly what you're going to get from that fight. Believe me, that's what you're going to get from the fight. But when you look at Mokaev and Gerard Burns, you're going to get the most technical fight with two well-rounded fighters, have a lot to prove to become that first fighter that's going to be an Irish MMA fighter that's going to be the Dagestani fighter. If that's going to ever happen in the history, it has to be this opportunity. We've seen that fail multiple times before. So that's the story on one side, while Mokaev's story is so much more bigger. But both are a very, very well-rounded fighters. So you're going to get the clinical MMA experience there. But then finally you go to the old school styles makes fight kind of a competition. And that's where Hamza versus Borislav, where you have a wrestler against a striker, you have a shorter opponent against a taller opponent, you have a guy who's looking at grappling without submission, while you look at Borislav, he's always a lanky guy that could get you into some chokes wherever you are. So it's just styles make fights in kind of a competition in the main event. So you're going to get all kinds of mixed martial. If anyone who's watching this event and is the first time watching an MMA fight, you're going to get a complete experience of what mixed martial art really is.
I can't wait. You ready for the controversial questions now?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. I did ask this question to Mohammed Mokaev, and he didn't want to comment on this. I asked him about what he thinks about Dana White's situation, about him coming into boxing with TKO, etc. For whatever reason, he didn't want to answer that question. He said he doesn't follow it and he doesn't want to make comment on it, which is fair enough. But I can ask you, and I suppose I'm asking you and also His Highness's opinion about kind of the figure in MMA in Dana White with the UFC coming over to boxing has caused a lot of talk amongst boxing fans and the whole industry about what he's going to do in boxing with Turki Al-Sheikh, etc. What do you think about that move, Shahid?
So to be honest, I think we've been very vocal always about the MMA industry, and the reason maybe we don't get a lot of traction as Brave when it comes to my conversations are because I always have boring conversations, and my conversation is not about fights and fighters. It's always not about selling the tickets or promoting the fights. I always talk about the industry and development of the industry itself. So the topic that we've been always talking about is that the MMA industry needs to be reformed. We have a lot of gap within the MMA industry itself. They need to be reformed from where we are as an event business. So whether you make Khabib and Conor McGregor fight, fantastic, massive fight, one of the biggest pay-per-view sellers, or Shakira and Beyonce fight, to be honest, there's no much difference, right? It's how many tickets can you get sold, how many pay-per-views can you get sold, can it be sold? So I think that's what our industry really is. We're in the event business. We should be talking about changing the format of our industry from an event business to sports business. And to be honest, and I'm always vocal about it, that MMA learned its business model from boxing and WWE. And we've adapted a combination of that. Has it worked out well? Fantastic. For the last 35, 40 years, yes, it has worked out really well to have a centralized body and to make sure that there are massive valued MMA brands like the UFCs to be there, you know. So amazing work to be put in, but at the same time, I think our focus should be where does MMA go from here. So when we look at boxing, for example, that Dana White is coming in and trying to establish the format of MMA, I think that might be a great start for boxing. To be honest, in my opinion, I think I'm not the expert in boxing, and I would be lying if I said that I know the industry so well. I'm in the mixed martial industry, and I know that really well. But I do believe that boxing, getting into the format of mixed martial art format, or getting at least that reform in, is not a bad idea. But I always also believe that boxing is a very old sport, and it's going to be very difficult to bring that fragmented industry together, which we are looking at MMA today. And I talk about it, and we spoke about it earlier as well, that I said that MMA is a very fragmented sport, and we need to bring them all together. You cannot have one brand, one company be able to bring the sport together. Sport is bigger than one company and one brand, so you need to be able to bring all the partners together. You look at the history of Brave over the past 10 years, when we say that we build the foundation of it. 2016, September 23rd was our first event. 2017, we partnered with the IMMAF, the International Governing Body of Mixed Martial Arts. There's a reason behind it. And the reason was to have a strong governing centralized structure, not 20 governing bodies, but one governing body that is recognized by the Olympic Committee that has a professional and amateur level, like the FIFA system. We want to bring the FIFA structure into mixed martial art, where a child has a dream to be a boxer or an MMA fighter. He should have a pathway to be able to do that. And if that pathway is not there, and if that pathway is to have a diary of phone books, to make phone calls to promoters and beg them to get the fight, or sell them how good of a trash talker you are, or how good of a good-looking guy you are, or your social media followers, that's the sad part about our industry, and it has to be an organic growth. The day you can have a Lionel Messi in mixed martial art, as I always say, is the day you know we're in the sports business. So I never heard Lionel Messi's interview ever, because I don't speak Spanish, he doesn't speak English, so I don't listen to his interviews, but they still consider him as one of the best players in the world. For me, I consider him as the second best player in the world after Ronaldo, and that's being biased. But keeping that aside, I do believe that you need entertainment, you need all that thing matters, all the things that brings people towards you. That's a benefit. But if you don't have that, talent should be the only variable. And if you have a sports structure that can bring talent being the only variable thing, that won't happen alone. It needs multiple organization from the governing bodies to be centralized, to have a structure or format of your competition from event to event. Instead of that, to have a franchise-based business model. And the franchise-based business model should not be a global one. It should be centralized each country, like we have the La Ligas, Bundesliga, Serie A, Premier Leagues. And that allows people to get their own heroes. So you can have a marker as a media platform exist, because you don't need the rest of the world football news. You have Real Madrid football news, and you have that pillar in your own country where your fans are interested in, whether you're fans of Real Madrid or not, or you're in Spain. That's good enough. You got the information there. That can be something that combat sports can have. But if you look at MMA industry, media is suffering around the world. Organizations are suffering around the world. This is not a secret. It's facts that's out there. You look at MMA managers, if they are managers and agents, they are suffering too. MMA gyms, if they're not part of a bigger fitness gym, they're also suffering. So what is this industry really giving back, being the most global and the most fastest growing, and all this stuff is happening? Why is the industry dying? Because the sports investors and the economy of the industry, the money is not floating into MMA because it's so fragmented, it's not centralized, there's no governance, there's no structure. Your objective as an MMA industry expert should be really, whether it's Dana White, whether it's Mohammed, Shahid, whether it's PFL or One Championship, whoever is it, as sitting at the top of it, should have the responsibility of bringing that economy into MMA, and that should be by creating a structure that is friendly for these investors to take that money from investing into other sports and have a little bit of that into the combat sports, but you have to give them the right platform for it. And I think today, boxing, MMA, we're all in the combat sports industry. We've all learned from each other. We learned from boxing and WWE, and today we're looking at boxing coming back and taking it from MMA with TKO and Dana White and all that stuff happening. But I think all the conversation is great, and I think boxing has a lot of room to improve more than MMA as well. But I think that conversation is far from our conversation. Our conversation is a new format that will centralize the combat sports, and we can start with MMA because MMA is younger, and I think there is more hope in MMA from my side personally that the change can happen faster, and you don't have that fragmented, wider industry like boxing. So once that happens, I think it's not just boxing, but I think every other martial arts, whether it's judo, wrestling, kickboxing, Muay Thai, name it, they were all going to adapt that format. And we will finally see combat sports as it should be, centralized in a proper structure, that finally fighters can come and say that I'm not just a prize fighter, I am playing for this team, and I am in the sports business, I'm a sports athlete, and today it doesn't look like you're a sports athlete.
Mohammed, let me ask you, do you dislike when people make comparisons between Brave and UFC? Does that, I'm not going to use the word offend, but obviously you've done what you've done, which is remarkable, what you and His Highness have done over the last 9-10 years, but there's obviously going to be comparisons with the UFC. How do you look at that when people start comparing the two?
I think it's basically lack of education, right? I think it's as simple as that. I think we are being vocal about the reform of the industry, and that's why it's very boring, because nobody understands what you're talking about, because who's looking into the industry? We have very few people talking about the industry. A lot of people talking about fighters, Dana White, organizations, their relationship with the fighter. Nobody's talking about anybody else. The industry is not fighters and organizations. The industry has so many other things. There's apparel sellers, there's merchandising, there's so many things going on. Nobody's talking about the industry. And that's a boring conversation that doesn't get the clickbites kind of content, Maybe that's the reason, and I totally understand that. So when people compare with UFC and Brave, or anybody with any other organization with Brave, I feel like, I just sit back and say that we're not competing with Brave, with UFC or PFL or anybody else, because we think UFC had a fantastic role in developing the sport to where it is today. And it's time for them to enjoy the fruits of it, and they are enjoying the fruits of their labor, of all the risks and everything else that they've took over the years. But I think it's time for somebody else to pass that torch to. If they cannot do it, somebody else are going to take that weight on their shoulder. And that's exactly the reason why our organization's name is Brave. It's not a brand called Brave Combat Federation. Yes, business-wise, corporate structure, by legal teams, and everybody has to create an IP structure for it. But believe me, for us, Brave is a virtue, and Brave is actually that term, what it really means. The definition of Brave is somebody has to be brave enough to see and create a new format, a new change, without knowing what the outcome is going to be. But keep in mind that there's one important thing that people forget. It's not just getting a new idea and going to try it. There's a thin line between being brave and being reckless. So you will do something really crazy and think that, I'm going to do the unexpected. I'm going to go and beat up this guy who's trying to rob me. But if that guy has a gun, you shouldn't be doing that. That's being reckless, not brave. So you know what I mean? So what being brave is, don't misunderstand it with reckless, or just doing things that nobody else thought about. It's about building that foundation, making sure that you have the knowledge of it. And if you look at Brave, 10 years, we have done that. We built the foundation. We've collaborated with the International Mixed Martial Art Federation as a governing body. We're the only organization that has traveled to 38 countries in 5 continents, the most global MMA organization. But at the same time, we have also partnered with 21 plus co-promoters. So we've worked with everybody together and built this foundation. So BRAVE100, November 7th, we're not only celebrating the foundation that we have built and the team of global MMA army that we have put together, we're also toasting towards what's going to come after BRAVE100, and that's the actual reform and a new format for mixed martial art, with a central governing body, franchise models, developing the national federations, and finally giving athletes, media platforms, everybody in the industry, a structure where they all can make a living out of it while enjoying what they do.
Yeah, obviously I just wanted you to kind of give me an insight into, not even the next 10 years, but the next 5 years. We know about the vision from His Highness and yourself about where you want to take Brave, but where do you see yourself now, in, God, we're getting on now, 2030? Like, where do you see, or where do you want Brave to be at in that position?
I think in the next 5 years, we're going to see a recognized governing body by the IOC, the International Olympic Committee. So we're going to have a governing body that's being recognized and become the central governing body for mixed martial art. We're also going to see a lot of franchise-based leagues starting around the world. So when I use the word league in combat sports, somehow league and tournaments somehow is spoken in the same way. But when I mean league, is from a football perspective, a franchise-based system. I think In the next 5 years, we're going to have 6 to 7 different leagues around the world for Brave. But that does not mean that we're going to completely remove the event business model. It is not one thing that can be switched overnight. We have the foundation to build the franchise-based model, and that's going to happen over the next 5 years. So we're going to have at least multiple leagues, at least 6 to 7 leagues in our pipeline for the next 5 years. We're still going to have the event-based structure of hosting 12 events every year, but we're also going to make sure that there's a huge media structure built within the company itself, where we realize today that whether it's PSG Lab, Barca Innovation, La Liga Tech, they're all understanding that sports has a big value to give back to the tech industry or the media industry. So sports, media, technology, entertainment, everything comes together. But what we're also seeing is that combat sports and sports have a big role in uniting the world as a sports diplomatic ambassadors. And I think MMA is playing that role as well. So I think Brave is going to be a big part of uniting the governments together for the benefit of mixed martial art, and that's something that we really look forward to making happen in all the countries that we go to. We're going to establish our first franchise model league in 2026, followed by multiple leagues within Europe, Latin America, Africa, Middle East as well, starting from India for sure, because they understand the franchise-based model than anybody else. And when I say the franchise-based model, the new startup franchise-based model, not the 150-year-old franchise-based model. So that is something that we're looking forward to. So once you have a governing body recognized, under that umbrella, you're going to have confederations and national federations. And each national federations or confederations will have their own leagues and their own franchise-based model, while you can have your big competitions at event-based model, more of country versus country structure. And where do you get these country athletes? From the franchise model. You're really creating the FIFA system. Yes, I didn't create anything new. I've just gone to the best system in sports that's globalized today, and I'm just copying it. Absolutely. And that's what we should be doing, and then trying to make it better, because it's combat sports, so we know the interest of public and what it can do by itself, of where MMA is today, but then making it into that format will make the reach grow bigger. You'll see so much more successful people within the industry outside of fighters and organizations finally. And you'll also see a lot of investors who's tasted blood through sports investment will now look at this as a secure, but at the same time, a fantastic investment opportunity that sports has ever seen. And I think that Brave Combat Federation is now going into our stage of where we're going to be going into fundraising. And we never looked at it before for the 10 years because we didn't want to lose sight of our priorities. But today at BRAVE100, we are already looking at some big investors to come on board. And that's going to be investing in the media side, technology side, and definitely the new franchise format. And we believe that's going to be the most lucrative investment opportunity that the world has ever seen in sports.
Here's a great question for you. Can you ever see Brave getting involved in boxing?
To be honest, I definitely see it happening, and boxing wouldn't have been the first sport, and why do I say that is because you would know better than me how complicated the industry is, right? So when we looked at MMA, we knew that MMA is in the same field as boxing when it comes to combat sports professional side. But I think that once the system is created, you're going to see every amateur traditional martial arts going to plug into the system. And it could be Brave that's converted into multiple other franchise models of other combat sports, or it could be any other organization. I don't think Brave is going to be the system that's going to have franchises around the world. No, we're just the beginning and setting those seeds, because there could be these organizations that's already big in the world will realize it and convert themselves into franchise model, and you'll see all the local organizations who are doing fantastic in their own countries or their regions will convert into that franchise model for their own countries or leagues, because you're talking about 160 plus countries in the world. So it's impossible for one brand to do that. We're just beginning seeds. 50 years down the line, we're going to have fans of MMA look back and say that, did you ever know that once upon a time mixed martial art was just fighters fighting against each other and it was an event business? We didn't have the structure at all. And that's the day we're going to be smiling and saying that we had a part to play in it and we set the seeds. You know, maybe we won't even be there to even watch that really turn into what football is today. But if somebody at that one point didn't sign off on a paper, we wouldn't have had Cristiano Ronaldo's and Messi's who are earning so much today while they didn't even have shoes or McDonald's to buy and eat, you know. So if that system is built in mixed martial art, and you know from boxing and me from mixed martial art, we know that one of the biggest lessons we always talk to people about our combat sports, regardless of which one is it, we talk about how it keeps kids off the street, how it helps the underprivileged. We always speak about it, and we know that how much boxing has contributed to that, but our system is an industry in favor of that. If you were in favor of that, where we boast how much people have changed their lives with boxing, the industry is not in the same line, and that's what's happening in MMA as well, and somebody has to be brave enough to make that difference, and that's what we're doing, and that's why we're brave.
I like what we did there. Mohammed, much appreciate your time. We'll look forward to a great week. Like I said, there's a lot going on this week, gala dinners, press conferences, weigh-ins, and so yeah, much appreciate again your hospitality, and I learnt you was a fellow Arsenal fan as well.
Oh yes. Absolutely. Arsenal. I always say that football is like my high school girlfriend, while MMA happens to be my wife. So you're never gonna be forgetting that high school girlfriend. So my first love is football, man. And I still when we were talking about having an event in Netherlands. We had our first Brave event in Netherlands. My first question was, listen, guys, I need to get a signed T-shirt from Dennis Bergkamp. Oh, we're not doing the event there, I've got a signed T-shirt from Dennis Bergkamp, so hardcore Arsenal fan, and that's something that sometimes when you're busy with the events and whatever happens, you always need to have your mobile open and to watch the match, and I try not to miss the Arsenal matches wherever I am. So football is always the first love.
Well, hopefully when you come to the UK, we can go and watch our beloved team together. I love that analogy with the wife and the girlfriend. Do you know what? I don't have a wife, but if my wife was to hear that, I know she'd ring me and she'd go, "What did you mean by that?" This is how she would have said, but I ain't got a wife, so I ain't got to worry about that. Anyway, Mohammed, much appreciate your time again, and yeah, we'll have a catch up after BRAVE100 this Friday night, and yeah, hope everything goes to plan and well, and hopefully the fighters will deliver.
No, thank you for being here, and I'm excited that you're here and covering this event, and been always a fan of IFLTV and yourself personally, so it's good to have you here and have this interview and get the opportunity to talk more about combat sports.
Yeah, I think we could have a separate interview at some point to do with life and football.
Absolutely.
I think, yeah?
Absolutely. I love talking about football. That's what you do.
We spent an hour, actually, the three of us spent an hour talking about football. We won't talk about Chelsea, but anyway.
Oh, yeah. No, football is one of those, you don't have responsibilities, you don't have anything to look at, you're just talking fun, right? I mean, that's why I love talking about football. Sometimes we have meetings, and my team knows, you talk to my team, every time we talk about MMA, the analogy is always about football, and they're like, is Brave a football organization or an MMA organization? But I'm like, you got to learn from that,
Top man, best of luck this weekend, and we'll catch up after Brave 100 this Friday. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
In this sport, you don't wait for judges to decide your fate. TenexToken puts you in control. Stake instantly, speculate discreetly, and keep your moves private. Register now for your share of the $250,000 prize pool. Multiple winners, bigger chances. TenexToken.io. Terms and conditions apply.